Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Stew podcast. My name is Dylan. I am your Grumpy Stew, and this is episode 5 of the podcast. Well, we'd like to welcome some new members to the Church of Fuck'em. We're offering our daily prayers to Our Lady of Fuck That and Our Lady of Fuck Them. And to anyone who joins the Church of Fuck'em today, we'll offer a special prayer to you, to Our Lady of Ain't Got Time for That, on your behalf, all for joining our newfound church. About a week ago, an Emirates A380 landed in JFK and went immediately into quarantine because about 100 passengers became ill on that flight from Dubai to New York City. It's reported that the lavatories were completely covered in vomit by the end of that 14-hour flight. And you know what started all this was just a bad fart. That's all it was a bad fart. It was one of the farts in economy. I think the passenger in question that had the fart had the special Muslim meal. It did not go well. It was the kind of fart that could end a marriage. It was the kind of fart that could peel the varnish off of a Foot Locker. The fart was so bad it caused an international incident. It was the kind of fart that could cause a level 5 biohazard. So don't eat the special meal when traveling internationally. Just eat whatever they serve. Just kind of a little podcast update here. New format for the podcast. We're going to keep the podcast to about 15 minutes or less. You know, this is kind of a new thing for me. Like I said from the very beginning, this is me in an empty room alone talking to myself. And it just happens to be recorded. And, you know, I ramble for 20 or 30 minutes and I try to edit it down and it's still too long. I was looking at the stats of the podcast. And the average listen time is about 4 minutes. So it seems like the average attention span is maybe 4 minutes. Maybe I don't know if I could chop these things down to 5 minutes or not. But, so, you know, if you kind of liked, I don't know, there's maybe 20 of you actually listen to this thing. If you liked the longer format, I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it short. Maybe we can attract some new listeners and spread the Grumpy Stew gospel, as it were. Oh, I recently finished a trip. I finished 2 trips recently. The trip I finished right before the one I got home from last night was a trip from Frankfurt. And let me tell you, now on the way to Frankfurt, it was totally normal. I mean, nothing strange or remotely notable happened. I mean, nothing I got to write down on my little notepad. But on the way home, oh boy. On the way home from Germany, witnessed a lady breastfeeding her 2.5-year-old son. Yeah. The kid's 2.5 and still in the tit. I didn't know that was possible. What the fuck? That's I'm sorry. One of my friends is like, well, unless you're a woman and you breastfed, you can't really complain. You don't know what the situation is. Don't judge. That's fucking weird, okay? That's fucking weird. That is fucking weird. 2.5 years old. I didn't know you could still produce milk after 2.5 years. I had no idea. That's new to me. I know nothing about tits. So, I mean, take that for what it is. But that's fucking weird. Fucking weird. So another thing we kind of want to talk about is you want to be a flight attendant. I understand that a few of you listening to this are interested in becoming flight attendants. And you want to become a flight attendant. Well, let me back up. The episode following this is going to be all about the interview process and all that good stuff, okay? I'm going to talk about that. But first, we need to talk about something else. We need to talk about this job, what it is, what it isn't, okay? This job can be a lot of things for a lot of people. It can also not be a lot of things for a lot of people. I'm going to preface this by saying that just at my airline in the last couple of weeks, we've had 2 suicides among our flight attendant group. 2 suicides. Why? Well, it could be a very lonely and solitary lifestyle. This isn't so much a job, it's a lifestyle. You're alone a lot. You have to be comfortable with being alone a lot. That means eating out alone on layovers. It means going to movies alone. It means entertaining yourself quite a bit on layovers in foreign countries, even domestically. You're not always going to be hanging out with your crew. Your friend that might be on the crew will always call out at the very last second and stick you with that fucking trip that nobody wanted, but you kept it to hang out with them, and they fucking called out. Happens every goddamn time. Don't make plans. That's rule number 1. Don't make plans on your layovers because it's going to go to shit. But like I said, it's a very solitary existence. You have to be comfortable with being alone. If you're not comfortable with that, don't become a flight attendant. You're going to have no social life outside of work. Your entire social life. Once you become a flight attendant, your entire social life will revolve around flight attendants because that's who you're going to spend all your time with. You're so rarely home that your non-flight attendant friends are eventually going to forget about you. You're going to lose touch with each other, and they're going to forget about you because you're not going to be home on the weekends. You're not going to be home for the birthdays. You're not going to be home for your friend's baby shower unless you just happen to hold the time off. But you're going to be so freaking junior for so long that you can forget about having weekends off. You're not going to have your birthday off. You're not going to have Christmas off, Thanksgiving, New Year. Another popular holiday is Halloween because, it's just for adults. It's just another drinking holiday. You're not going to have those days off. You're going to be working. The senior people will have those days off. That's just the reality of airline life and working within the seniority system. I mean, you hang around long enough, eventually you will have the weekends off. You will eventually hold holidays off. This year, for me, I held vacation over the Thanksgiving holiday for the first time in 8 years. And that's fine by me. It took me 8 years to get here, but I'm okay with that because I understand that's how the seniority system works. That's just how life in the airline world works. It's reality. And it's just going to get better next year and the year after that and the year after that. And for the next, 20, 30 years I'm flying, it's just going to keep getting better. I'm okay with that. Everybody has to do their time and put in their dues. It's just how it is. Now, when you, start interviewing for a flight attendant job, you're going to be asked 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different times, if you're willing to work nights, weekends, holidays, evenings, mornings, birthdays, anniversaries, bar mitzvah, communion, first dance, whatever. You're going to be asked if you're going to be willing to show up and work during these times that may not necessarily work with your social calendar. I'm going to break this down to you very bluntly. Your social calendar no longer exists once you start becoming a flight attendant. That is reality. You have to be okay with being alone. You have to be okay with not having much of a social life outside of work. If that bothers you, if you tend to be depressed when you're alone a lot, do not become a flight attendant. It's not going to be good for you. The other thing you need to realize is that it's hard to maintain relationships with normal people after you become a flight attendant. Once you become a flight attendant, you are no longer one of them. You're no longer a muggle. You're now a wizard. After you complete your time at Hogwarts, at your airline's training facility, we'll just call that Hogwarts. Once you graduate from Hogwarts, you're no longer a normal person. You're no longer a muggle. Does that make sense? You are now a flight attendant. And all of your non-flight attendant relationships are going to be very difficult to maintain, including your romantic relationships. So if you're already involved with somebody, either married or just long-term dating, you need to have a very long conversation with that person. Maybe they need to listen to this podcast. And you need to have a very long conversation about, what if I can't be home every weekend? You're not going to be home every weekend. You might get one weekend off a month. What if I can't be home for your birthday? What if I can't be home for our anniversary? What if I can't get out of work because the cat gets sick or whatever? Whatever the fuck it is, you need to have these conversations because realistically speaking, there is going to be a situation that's going to be important to your other half, and you can't get the time off. It's going to happen. It happens. It's not going to happen all the time. There are going to be times you're going to be able to swap out your trip or get a day off or hold vacation. It's not all doom and gloom. I'm just saying that there are going to be times that you can't be there for that person when they really need you to. And so it does become difficult to maintain these relationships. The other reason it becomes difficult to maintain relationships is when you're working, you're not like in an office somewhere. You're 5 miles up in the sky moving at 80% of the speed of sound. Cell phones don't work, okay? You have to have Wi-Fi connectivity, and your airline may not have Wi-Fi on board, or they might have very strict rules about you using your personal device to text and message and Facebook and all that other garbage. So, you're going to be busy anyway. You're not going to stop in the middle of service to check your phone. You might be in a foreign country where they can't call you until you have access to the internet. Things are going to happen. And it does seem to like weigh on other people's minds about what you're up to, where you're going, what's going on, who are you with. So if your other half is kind of the insecure type or the jealous type, maybe you should wait until you can dump them. I'm kidding. But you do need to have a heart-to-heart about whether or not adopting this new lifestyle is going to be a problem for your other half. Something else you need to consider is you're going to have very limited rest a lot of the time. What does that mean? Well, there are laws that regulate flight attendant rest, at least here in the United States. I can't speak for other countries. And domestic United States, minimum legal rest is 8.5 hours behind a door. Now, let's say one day you have legal minimum rest on your first day of your trip. Well, the second day of your trip, you have to have at least 10 hours. It's called subsequent rest. But, even 10 hours really isn't very much. Flying domestically, and you will be flying domestically a lot your first few years of flying. And I guarantee you, every fucking layover you're going to have is going to be short. It's Murphy's Law. The minute you have a scheduled 9-hour layover, it's going to turn into a 7-hour layover. You're going to have to delay your next departure in the morning just to stay legal. It happens. It happens every fucking time. That's why I hate flying domestic. So you have to be okay with being tired all the time. Some people prefer domestic, and once you have 3 or 4 years seniority, you can hold some really sweet domestic trips. I prefer international. For me, it's one leg there, one leg home, with a long layover in the middle, and it's commutable on both ends. I don't have to stay in my crash pad in New York. That works for me. Yeah, it's tiring in one respect, because of the, crossing 6 time zones is tiring. But nothing kicks my ass more than working a 3-day domestic. I don't know what it is with domestic trips, but they kick my ass. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You're also going to be living out of a suitcase. Not just at your layovers. If let's say you become a New York-based flight attendant here in the United States, New York City is kind of expensive. You may not decide to shell out the $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, and you might choose to live elsewhere, commute to New York, and stay in a crash pad in between your work assignments. So you're going to be living in your suitcase there. You're going to be living in a suitcase on your layovers. You're probably going to back up your trip so that way you limit how many times you fly to and from home. So you're going to be living in a suitcase, again, at your crash pad in New York. So you might be away from home for a week at a time, living out of a suitcase. It might seem abnormal. My other half is like, how come you always wear the same clothes? Because I live out of a suitcase. I don't go home to a closet until I go home in Florida. And when I'm in New York, I'm living out of a suitcase. I bring 3 uniforms and 2 normal outfits. That's it. I don't bring options. Some girls have to have their options. I don't bring options. I have 2 shirts, 2 shorts. In the winter, it's 2 shirts, 2 pair of pants. That's it. That is it. I'm not dragging around 60 pounds of shit for a week to have options. I'm not high maintenance like that, but that's me. That's kind of some of the basics of what it's like to be a flight attendant. It's not a glamorous job. You're going to be cleaning up vomit. You're going to be cleaning lavatories in the air. You're going to be serving food that you don't necessarily like. You might be serving beverages that you don't approve of, like if you have issues with alcohol, don't become a flight attendant. Some people like kind of odorous beverages, like tomato juice. You can smell tomato juice 50 feet away. If that bothers you, oh, tough cookies. You have to serve it. I don't know what to tell you. But those are kind of the basics of what it's like to be a flight attendant. And we're going to cover more of that in the next episode. So, with that in mind, I'm already out of time. I'm trying to keep this at 15 minutes or less, and this is at 15 and a half minutes already. Keep in mind, there are ups and downs and good and bad to this lifestyle that we have. So, subscribe to the podcast, leave your comments and questions about the lifestyle of the flight attendant if you're not already a flight attendant. If you're already a flight attendant, leave some advice, leave some tips, or leave a funny story. Leave the grossest thing you've ever seen on board. How about that? That'll give you something to talk about. I do appreciate all of you listening to the podcast, and don't forget to join the Church of Fuck'em here at the Grumpy Stew Podcast. My name is Dylan, and I'll see you in episode 6.